This is Movie and a Beer, a podcast based in Portland, Oregon, where you can share in our discussion about movies and what beers go best with them. From classic cinema to the latest blockbuster, we all can use a little help figuring out what beers to enjoy in the theater or at home. So listen in and explore with us the vast world of ales and lagers to pair up with your movie experience. Okay, welcome to Movie and a Beer. My name is Dan Kapersky. Today we have with us...
I'm Blake.
Randall.
And on this wonderful episode, we're going to discuss the movie Joker.
Yes.
And the beers that each of us had while we watched it at the Fox Tower Theater here in Portland, Oregon. This is a quote-unquote comic book movie, but it isn't really a comic book movie in so much that it's just a explanation or an exploration of the character Joker from the Batman series for those that are unfamiliar. The movie takes place in the 1970s in a city called Gotham, which is basically New York City. They utilize that for the most part. It's directed by Todd Phillips. It has Joaquin Phoenix as the lead. He's the mental ill gentleman known as Authur Fleck, whose life definitely starts to unravel. And he does state in the movie that now that he is not acting normal, people are noticing him. So it's kind of a lead in to his desire to create chaos because he then becomes the center of that. There are some great supporting characters, including Robert De Niro, who plays Franklin Murray on the Franklin Murray Show, or the Murray Franklin Show. Arthur gets invited to be on the show after he does a comic appearance at a small club, and they brought him on to kind of make fun of him, but he turns it around and kind of sets the stage as the beginning of the Joker's career, because he gets announced as Joker when he comes out. So, not to plot spoil it, but that's when it happens.
I mean, in the trailer, they do show in the latest trailer. And Murray, one little thing. Can you introduce me as Joker? And then it cuts to the title, and you're told, like, October 4th, and then we watch it.
The movie does cover a lot of social issues. It's got Frances Conroy. Those of you who have seen her, she's been in movies and television for years and decades. She was in 6 Feet Under. That's the one that I remember her the most as. She was the mother.
Okay.
Yeah, she plays the mother in this. Slightly unstable, sort of mean to her son, who's there to help her out and, loves her to death.
Kind of. Boy, her storylines. I really like this movie.
Yeah. It does not necessarily dive into any serious backstories of any of the other DC characters. It is solely about this character named Joker. It does borrow some and has somewhat, as Blake had pointed out towards the end of the movie, kind of a new origin story or what if or multiverse, variation on the typical Batman.
Yeah, DC calls them Elseworlds. It's similar stuff as Red Sun, where Superman landed in Russia instead of Kansas. That's such a good story. I can't wait to read that again. But feels like an Elseworlds kind of take on the Joker. It's like Dan was saying, what if? Like when Marvel says what if this is how he got started. The thing people like about the Joker is that he doesn't have a set origin story. They tend to mix him up or say it might be this or it could be this. It's like how the Heath Ledger Joker told multiple stories about how he got the scars. And there's a bunch of theories on that, but I'm not going to go into those.
Well, what's the theory behind no origin story for the Joker?
You can't...
lazy writing?
It's a way... I mean, probably yes. But the cool idea is to make it... Man. It's to make it, mysterious. Because Batman's, the great, world's greatest detective. In theory, in the comics. He can't figure out who the Joker is. He can... CSI evidence from the Riddler from 9 months ago and figure out, he's in this abandoned warehouse where they once had a joke contest or whatever, and he can't ever crack the Joker. That's the whole thing is he's a stoic detective and Joker's the manic comedian.
I'm realizing there's a lot of connections here between Sherlock Holmes and Moriarty and Batman and Joker.
I'm pretty sure it was one of the...
Probably inspired, intentional.
Right?
It's gotta be, right? Because Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, he did Sherlock Holmes back in, 1880s or something? And when was the first appearance of Batman?
Right.
1960? 30s? No, in the comic book?
Because he was after Superman.
Yeah.
And that was in the 20s, wasn't it?
The magic of the internet shall help us out with this quest.
Mm-hmm. Help us, Google. Mon, you're our only help.
1939.
Yeah, I thought it was
Okay.
early.
Yeah.
Or like World War
I'm
II.
pretty sure he fought some Nazis. Yeah.
I know there's a cover with him and Robin planting gardens for the war effort. I love those covers so much. I thought it was a really cool take. It also borrows elements from the Killing Joke. The whole aspect of him wanting to be a stand-up comedian and then failing and eventually turning into the Joker. Alan Moore took a way different take on it, but it's got similar notes.
So, Randall, what are your thoughts? I mean, I know you were not necessarily thrilled with it, but
the beer was great. the break side was great. Yeah, I don't know. The movie was like visually like super appealing. Visually, it was just amazing. I think it really captured a tone, a grittiness of 1970s New York or that sort of film era, sort of early Scorsese sort of vibe. But as far as the overall movie, like, did I enjoy it? I just didn't feel like it really went anywhere. I felt like there was no real change in any of the characters. They all just kind of stayed the same. Joker was, there was a slow demise for the Joker to becoming the Joker, but I didn't really care about him in the beginning of the movie anyways. There wasn't any, what do they call it, like a churning point for the Joker who like really snapped. It's just kind of a slow, degrading psychosis, and I just found it a little boring. Didn't care for it.
yeah, it is interesting that some of the way that they describe the visual scenes as, do you know that it's real or not? Because he has psychosis and has an imagination that he believes is real, just like his mother and her unfortunate fixation on Mr. Wayne. Thomas Wayne, not Bruce.
Who, let me just say, as a fan of comics, there's been maybe like maybe two other adaptations where Thomas Wayne was portrayed as not a kind-hearted soul, and this was one of them. It threw me off. I said to Dan after the movie, he's like, Thomas Wayne's a dick.
Yeah, he's kind of a jerk in the movie.
Yeah.
Definitely a jerk.
But yeah.
This movie reminds me of Fight Club a little bit.
Yeah.
I
got tons of
Fight
that too.
Club story arc, but I just think Fight Club did it so much better.
But, what's funny is I feel like the turning point was when he got to be on the show. Like there's no spoilers, but for me it was like, oh, this is when it's kind of like clicking. But I also do enjoy like good slow burn 70s movies, and Scorsese, like that movie where it just takes forever for something to happen. When it does, you're like, whoa, what did I just watch?
Yeah. I think for me, the probably if I were to say a turning point would have been when he was running, being violent and using violence. He ran, and there's a scene, I think it's in the previews, of him kind of slow dancing in the bathroom. He's running down the street and goes to a city park, and there's some guys hanging out, and they're looking at him funny because he's in his clown outfit, and he's just chucking along and runs into this bathroom, and there's no way to lock it. But then he realizes that he's free. What he has done, while he knows it's wrong, he doesn't care. And he's free, and so he discovers then that, hey, this is something I like. Because he does talk about that with his therapist. He talks about it. It comes up in some of the dialogues.
They show his journal, which kind of indicates that pretty heavily. And I don't know if this will be a spoiler since it happens early, like the origin of the laugh. I thought that was really, really clever. Make it, I guess, heads up spoiler if you really don't want to hear any whatever about the movie. But the fact that it's a medical condition that he can't help, that he's just like gets nervous and just starts laughing and can't stop. When he's like covering his face with his elbows, like that's good. So I was reading in an interview, Joaquin Phoenix said he considered that like the Joker trying to escape, like that persona trying to say, I want to be free, and killing all the people.
Well, you also said that it was one of the hardest things that he ever had to learn how to do, or at least master and get it consistent each time that he did it.
Oh, spoiler over if you skipped ahead.
Yeah. I mean, it looked excruciating for him to do it. Like he, when he had his...
It looked like whooping cough.
It does. It just destroyed him physically when he would start laughing. Yeah, I guess when he finally embraced it instead of thinking that his life is miserable, but really just a comedy.
Okay, so what's this better than Dark Knight?
I'm still trying to figure that out. It's like apples and oranges.
Is it?
It is.
Because Dark Knight
is a different movie because, Batman, but like,
in
terms of like Joker's story, Heath Ledger is the way he played Joker a better Joker in terms of...
I like that Joker better. Well, I feel like The Dark Knight is a comic book movie, and this is a movie that has a character from a comic book in it. Personally, I like the Heath Ledger Joker better. It's easier to quote. It's less depressing.
Really? I think in terms of just movies, though, which one did you enjoy more? overall? Like
I guess Dark Knight.
Dark Knight.
I loved Joker, but Dark Knight's one of my absolute favorite movies.
Yeah, it's
the whole trilogy is just incredible.
And I think for me, I'd say the same thing. It's because it has a lot of the great elements of Joker. It's definitely a different portrayal of Joker and a different portrayal of Gotham and Dark Knight again. No,
Christopher Nolan.
Christopher Nolan. Yeah,
Christopher Nolan.
He just presented it so well, both Batman's and Joker's story, and obviously the performances on both parts were amazing. Joaquin Phoenix did an amazing job. But yeah, there's a bunch of clever things in this movie that I think worked really well, but they all didn't quite land together in a story.
That's fair.
Yeah, I can see why it got mixed reviews. It's doing great. I guess it's got made like $600 million so far.
Beat the crap out of Gemini Man.
So, are we ready to talk about the beers that we had?
Yes.
Let's do it.
Okay, so if we had a commercial to insert, this would be where we do it. Okay, so now that we're back, let's pick it up with Blake. We had a limited selection of draft beers.
Limited selection and a lot of rules.
Yeah, a lot of rules and some bottles. So this was at the Fox Theater in downtown Portland. They do have alcohol. They have to give you a wristband. They check your ID. You can only get one at a time.
Even if you were there with your friends who did this, they do the same spiel again.
Yes, over and
Which,
over.
I'm glad, I guess. Keeping it safe, but it felt like overkill.
Yeah, so Blake and I chose to go with bottles, and Randall did a draft. So, Blake, what did you have for your bottle?
I got a bottle of the Ballast Point Sculpin IPA.
Ooh.
Solely based on the label and the name. The label had like a cool shit knot thing going, and the word Sculpin's fun.
Yeah, and it's got a big fish on it.
I do like me some fish.
Yeah, and so the flavor profile of that is pretty strong, as I understand.
Mm-hmm. I feel like it went really well with the movie. It was like a very complicated, forward, like, here's the taste. Okay, all right, there's a beer here. It's not like when you're drinking like something way too light. You're like, this is basically water. This stuff stands out, and I feel like that really matched with the whole Arthur trying to stand out. And like, personally, this beer complemented the movie exactly right for me. Like, if I wasn't so entranced, I would have gotten a second one. But we all definitely in this packed theater did not move.
Yeah, we were unfortunately in the middle of the row. I didn't think about that.
We
didn't really have a chance to get up.
Yeah, I think next time we got to do aisle.
Now we know.
Yeah, now we know.
But yeah, I really enjoyed it.
So
I tried to drink it slower so I'd enjoy it for longer.
Yeah. So do you think it changed flavor much as it warmed up?
A little bit.
Probably a little more sweeter.
Unfortunately, I finished it pretty early in the movie because of trailers. If I remember correctly, it seemed a little bit sweeter. The flavor was less like extreme as I drank it.
Or maybe your taste buds just got normalized to it.
That's very likely.
Numbed a little bit. You lose sensitivity as you drink it.
They poured them into black cups for us, right?
Correct.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that was helpful. I feel like if I drank it out of the bottle, I would not have enjoyed it as much. Like, I'd still like it, but I'd be like, no, this is okay.
Okay, Dan, beer expert. Why should we care about Blake's beer?
Because Blake had it.
Because it was a good choice.
What makes it a good choice?
What makes it a good choice is that this movie is complex, deep, and a slow burner, as we've mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
I think that this beer, being a really complex, kind of strong flavor profile, is going to draw you in and keep you. And as Blake mentioned, it does deaden a little bit as you let it warm up, over 20 or 30 minutes sitting in a glass. I think it still holds its own. I don't mind that when the stronger beers start losing some of their bite a little bit as they warm up. I certainly don't mind that. Mine did the same. So yeah, I think a stronger flavor beer doesn't have to be an IPA, but I think a stronger pale ale or just something that has enough bite to it to hold your attention.
Okay, what's your definition of complex? Just to be clear.
Okay,
I like to use that word a lot.
Yeah,
I mean, it makes you.
I want to sound smart about beer.
It makes you sound complex.
I don't. Yeah, it makes me sound really complex.
So deep.
It's one of those fancy words. So complex would mean that it has a range of flavors. It's not very shallow. It has overlaying, so you have a malt character or body that has the support and the sweetness.
Did you say it has underlings?
Underlying malt, not underlings.
Oh, okay.
An underlying malt, and then on top of that, you have different types of hops. Depending on when the hops are added during the boil or after the boil in a secondary or however many times they hop it, you're going to build complexity of flavor. It's the same with making any kind of food. The more things you add to it over time, the more complex it's going to build.
The more underlings you grind up into your beer, yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, so if this beer was complex, what would be its polar opposite? What would be a simple beer in comparison that people would know
A
about?
glass of water.
Well, a really light beer, like
Yeah.
you could find any American adjunct lager out there, like Coors. They had a couple of those on draft.
Okay.
Some really limited beers on the draft profile. They had the Breakside IPA, which was the one that you selected, which was probably a pretty good choice.
Mm-hmm.
Complex, again, not a very shallow or thin beer. It has a lot of flavors that marry together, that blend to make a pleasant profile on your mouth. You know that it's not just one resin cone, or it's not just piney, or it's not just fruity or citrus or pithy, or it could be anything from dry leaves to earthen tones, like you're tasting dirt, or maybe sticking something metal in your mouth for a moment. You get that kind of iodized metal. That is a profile that exists in hops. It can be very mild, it can be very strong. And so the complexity is the proportions of those different flavors and how they work together.
So if I was at a party and I wanted something for everybody and I picked the Ballast Point, what would I pick? What would the other beer be then?
The opposite would be something like Coors or Bud.
Would you serve a Coors with this really? Like that? Would that be like covering the bases if I got a Coors and the Ballast Point?
If you really wanted a shallow, simple beer that has a single flavor profile that doesn't change when it warms up, I mean, it just tastes the same. It's like water.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's gonna just maintain what it is. It's made for that. You could go with a pale ale that's really light, or a pilsner, or something like that.
What's a step up from the Coors Light? I love a Coors Light, by the way.
I would say a pilsner or something that's going to be similar, or a rice lager like Asahi or Sapporo.
I'm trying to think of like cheap beers. I almost want to say like a Land Shark lager, but you can't really get those around here.
Yeah, no. If you can find a nice cheap lager in there, and a lot of the bigger breweries are starting to come out with lower calorie lagers. Anything like that, it's going to taste better than a crappy American adjunct, but it's still an American adjunct lager. It's just done with better hop profiles and probably better malt.
Remind me, American adjunct means?
So adjunct means it's using something other than just malts.
Okay.
It's going to use sugars from either corn, rice, or some other grain other than barley.
Okay. Use it in a sentence. This beer is really adjunct.
This beer is adjunct AF.
Yes.
Adjunct AF.
Yes. Okay, so
Coors Light.
Exactly, and that's I forgot. Oh, I broke my adjunct. Yeah, that's very good. So as I mentioned, I picked an IPA. I picked Voodoo Ranger IPA by New Belgium Brewing out of Colorado. Really piney, citrus forward, just up in your face. Grassy, almost an alcohol hit on it because it is like 7% alcohol. So, and yours was also 7%. So it was like, do I really want another one of these? Because it's really going to hit your taste buds and hang onto your taste buds a while. It does have some tropical notes on it. It lists off, it's got like Nugget, Cascade, Simcoe, Chinook, Mosaic, and Amarillo hops, which is a huge hop variety. So you're going to have grassy hits. You're going to have just a lot of what are called resins or bitterness units that are lingering, as we had talked about in previous episodes. The IBUs don't necessarily mean it's going to taste bitter. That's just how much alpha acidity is left over, how much of the bitterness that you would get from acids, that's what's left after it's boiled off, done its magic.
It's delicious, delicious magic.
It is. And so I would say my beer was probably very similar to yours. It's just a different hop profile.
Okay.
So same kind of solid body, sweetness on the back, a little light up front, but then, the Voodoo Ranger is known for being like a really strong forward beer. It's really nice. Unfortunately, it was expensive. I mean, the bottles in the drafts were like, it's a movie theater, so beware of price gouging. I think we paid like $8 a piece for those beers, which is like the price of a 6-pack at a store. Nice.
Pretty good. Tropical notes. That's my favorite word combo as well.
It's a good word. It's a good.
I'm gonna have to try that. What was it? The Voodoo?
Yep, Voodoo Ranger. So they have different iterations or versions of it. This is just the standard one they put out in bottles. The same with Ballast Point Sculpin.
Oh, cool.
They make 4 or 5 variations on it where they're going to add pineapple or add habanero or add something to it. So you have a base beer that's really solid, and then you're just highlighting other flavors that are going to
one could say Elseworld versions of the beer.
Yes, Elseworld versions of it.
I always struggle with Voodoo Ranger because I love the logo, the skeleton with the
Ranger hat. It's a Ranger hat.
Ranger hat, yeah, like the Ranger. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm thinking of that hat my coworker has. It's such a cool art style. It's not one I can just casually drink, I feel like.
Yeah,
it seems weird to just be at home, like, long day at work. Casual sit,
Yeah. I think both of these beers are beers with purpose.
Beers with purpose.
Yes.
That's a t-shirt.
That's a t-shirt.
And so, Randall, the one that you selected was the one that we've actually talked a few times about before, which is a Breakside IPA.
Yay, Breakside.
What were your thoughts?
It was a beer that I enjoyed. Dan, back to you.
Cool. I mean, I think it's come up a few times in previous episodes of a beer that we've talked about a number of times, and it has won multiple awards, and it is a very classic, standard Northwest style IPA.
It's a Portland favorite. I live right down the street from the Breakside Brewery. It's hard to go wrong with any one of their beers that those guys make. They do a really great job. They're right up there with me for like 10 Barrel or something like that, something else local. And
I do like a 10 Barrel.
I do like, 10 Barrel's great. I enjoyed it. I got the big one, the 22 ounce, because
you're a grown man.
I'm a grown man, and it was a long movie, and I had a feeling I wasn't going to like it. I went in a little biased, I'll be honest with you. I wouldn't,
That's fair.
Go in with an open mind. That's okay.
Totally cool.
But the beer,
kick him off the podcast.
No open mind, no open heart, you're fired.
Oh,
I mean, frankly, as long as you drink
open beer.
As long as you drink beer, I think you're fine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the beer opened my mind. I love the beer. It's hard. It's always like when you're at a movie theater and it's like, do I really want to try something new for like the price inflated cost of a beer? And
it's a real gamble.
It's a real gamble. It's not like, and then you're not sure if the movie's going to be okay. So I needed to pick something that I knew I loved, that I knew at the very least I could just like zone out and be like, damn, this is good.
3 thumbs up on the beers that we selected. Mm-hmm. Definitely using a complex beer with a complex movie. Good pairing.
Yeah.
Also, just a really good, clean, standard IPA, which is still going to have that bitterness bite to it, but not be offensive in flavor. Our beers were a little bit strong in flavor profile, not as much so as the Breakside IPA, but I still think all 3 really good choices.
Yeah.
If you can get like 2, because this is a 2-hour movie.
Sit in the aisle.
Yeah. Sit in the aisle, 2-hour movie. Like maybe sip 1 for the first hour, sip 1 for the second. If you can, save your last sip for the final like cool shot that I love so much.
What? Well, you can spoil it. We spoiled like 90% of this movie.
That's true. When he's on the taxi and he realizes his mouth is bleeding, so he puts his fingers in and draws a smile on.
Yeah.
I was vibrating with joy. Like that.
Gosh, I really wanted to love this movie, but that was a good shot. I will say it was great. He did a good job. Good job, Joaquin.
I almost want to say that was a like no cuts. Like it's a steady shot from when they like pulled him out, or maybe not.
Okay, so that'll bring us to the end of this episode. I want to thank everybody for listening and joining us today. And as always, please drink responsibly, and note that the opinions expressed during the taping of this podcast are those of the hosts. And as always, hydrate as you go. Thanks for listening. This has been Movie and a Beer. Stay tuned for future episodes and features to be added to our website and podcast. And please remember to drink responsibly and hydrate.